Lieutenant Sarah Chen ducked as another training projectile whizzed past her helmet, the blue energy bolt leaving a smoking crater in the concrete wall behind her. The Galactic Defense Academy's obstacle course was designed to break cadets, and today, it seemed particularly eager to break her. "Move faster, human," Instructor Vextal bellowed through the comm system, his reptilian voice dripping with disdain. The Saurian's four eyes tracked her movement with predatory precision. "Your pathetic bipedal locomotion is an embarrassment to this institution." Sarah bit back her response and rolled behind another barrier. Around her, alien cadets moved with inhuman grace and speed. The crystalline Zephyrians phased through solid matter like it was air. The insectoid Mantari leaped impossible distances with their powerful legs. The massive Krogar simply smashed through obstacles that would stop a human cold. And then there was Sarah, sweating inside her standard-issue armor, her human limitations on full display for everyone to mock. She had known this would happen when Earth finally gained admission to the Galactic Defense Force. Humanity was the newest species to join, and by most measures the weakest. No natural armor like the Krogar, no energy manipulation like the Ethereals, no hive-mind coordination like the Collective, just stubborn persistence and a brain that refused to quit. "Look at the monkey struggle," she heard Cadet Thrix whisper to his Mantari companion. His translator made the insult clear in perfect standard galactic. Earth must have been desperate to send this one. Sarah's jaw clenched. She had graduated top of her class from Earth's military academy. She held advanced degrees in xenobiology and tactical warfare. She spoke 7 alien languages fluently. But none of that mattered here, where physical prowess and natural abilities determined your worth. The training course reset with a mechanical whir. Energy barriers flickered to life, creating a maze of deadly obstacles. Sarah checked her weapons charge and studied the layout. The objective was simple: reach the extraction point in under 10 minutes while avoiding or neutralizing threats. Most cadets used their natural abilities to bypass the challenges entirely. Sarah had to do it the hard way. She moved methodically, using cover and angles that the other species ignored. While a Zephyrian could phase through a wall, Sarah had to find the hidden maintenance hatch. While a Mantari could leap over a pit trap, Sarah had to carefully edge along the narrow ledge. But she noticed things the others missed: the way the energy barriers pulsed in a specific pattern, the slight discoloration in the floor that indicated pressure plates, the almost imperceptible heat shimmer that revealed hidden cameras. 15 minutes, Vextal announced. "The human continues to embarrass herself." Sarah ignored him and kept moving. She had spotted something that made her heart race with possibility. The final chamber contained 3 apparent exit routes, but careful observation revealed the truth. 2 were elaborate traps designed to test spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. The third was hidden so well that only someone trained to notice the smallest details would find it. She slipped through the concealed passage and emerged at the extraction point a full minute before the next closest. Cadet Instructor Vextal's silence was deafening. The other cadets began to murmur among themselves. How had the weak human beaten them? It had to be luck. Or perhaps the course had malfunctioned. But Colonel Wraith noticed something different. The elderly Terran officer had been observing from the command deck, his weathered face unreadable. He made a note on his datapad and continued watching as Sarah removed her helmet, revealing short black hair damp with sweat and dark eyes that held no trace of defeat, despite the mockery around her. Over the following weeks, the pattern continued. In physical challenges, Sarah lagged behind. In endurance tests, she struggled to keep pace. But in every exercise that required tactical thinking, pattern recognition, or pure determination, she excelled in ways that left her instructors scratching their heads. During the zero-gravity combat simulation, while other cadets relied on natural adaptations or technological enhancements, Sarah used Newtonian physics and environmental awareness to outmaneuver opponents twice her size. In the survival exercise on the desert moon of Cathvar, she was the only cadet to notice that the apparently random placement of supply caches actually formed a pattern that led to a hidden water source. But the mockery continued. Her classmates saw only her failures, not her successes. They saw the sweat and strain of effort, not the results that effort produced. Everything changed during the Deep Space Patrol exercise. Sarah was assigned to Team 7, considered the least promising group in their class. Their mission was routine: patrol the outer rim of the Academy's training sector and report any anomalies. It was designed to be boring, a simple test of protocol and procedure. Sarah was monitoring long-range sensors while her teammates socialized, confident that nothing exciting would happen in this backwater region of space. That's when she saw it. A sensor ghost that appeared for exactly 0.3 seconds before vanishing. Her teammates laughed when she reported it. Probably a glitch. Maybe space debris. The Mantari pilot even suggested that human sensors were inferior and prone to false readings. But Sarah trusted her instincts. She had learned to watch for things others missed, to find patterns in chaos. She quietly began a deeper scan, using techniques she had learned from studying Earth's early warning systems. The second ghost lasted 0.4 seconds. The third, 0.5 seconds. Someone was testing their stealth technology against Academy sensors, gradually increasing exposure time to map their detection thresholds. It was textbook reconnaissance behavior, the kind Earth's military had perfected during the resource wars of the 22nd century. When Sarah tried to convince her team leader, Cadet Thrix, he dismissed her concerns with barely concealed contempt. Humans see patterns that don't exist, he said. It's a documented flaw in your neural architecture. But Sarah had already made her decision. She quietly transmitted her findings on a secure channel to Academy Command, including her analysis of the probe pattern and projected locations for the next tests. 12 hours later, Academy Command detected a massive pirate consortium fleet massing just outside the training sector. The reconnaissance probes Sarah had identified were advanced scouts for a planned raid on the Academy's weapon research facility. The emergency alarm that jolted the Academy to high alert changed everything for Sarah Chen, but she didn't know that yet. All she knew was that her quiet observation had potentially saved thousands of lives, and for the first time since arriving at the Academy, she felt like she might actually belong among the stars. The Academy's command center buzzed with controlled chaos as officers from dozens of species coordinated the response to the pirate threat. Sarah stood at attention in the corner, feeling completely out of place among the senior staff. She had been summoned immediately after her discovery, but no one had told her why she was still here. Fleet Admiral Zarthek, an imposing ethereal whose energy form crackled with authority, studied the tactical display with glowing eyes. The consortium has assembled 17 capital ships and over 40 fighters. Our defensive fleet consists of 12 ships, most of them training vessels with cadet crews. The weapon research facility cannot be evacuated in time, reported Commander Velris, her crystalline form refracting the display light into rainbow patterns. 3 years of classified research would fall into pirate hands. Sarah watched the debate unfold, learning more about galactic military doctrine in 30 minutes than in her previous 3 months at the Academy. The pirates had chosen their target perfectly. The research facility contained prototype weapons that could shift the balance of power in a dozen ongoing conflicts. But the Academy's defensive fleet was designed for training, not warfare. That's when Colonel Wraith stepped forward. Sarah had seen the grizzled human officer around the Academy, but had never spoken to him directly. He was old for active duty, his hair silver gray, his face mapped with scars from conflicts most cadets had only read about. Admiral, I have a recommendation, Wraith said quietly. Speak. Colonel, deploy the cadets. The command center fell silent. Several officers began speaking at once, their translations creating a cacophony of objection. The cadets are not ready for combat, Admiral Zarthek said firmly. Most have barely completed basic training. With respect, Admiral, this isn't about readiness, Wraith replied. It's about capability. The pirates are expecting to face a conventional defense. They've studied our standard tactics and formations. But cadets fight differently. They're unpredictable. They haven't learned to be afraid yet. Sarah felt her heart racing. Was he seriously suggesting that students be thrown into battle against experienced pirates? Furthermore, Wraith continued, I believe we have an asset that could prove decisive. His eyes found Sarah across the room. Cadet Chen stepped forward. Sarah's legs felt like liquid, but she managed to cross the room without stumbling. Every eye in the command center was on her, and she could feel the weight of their judgment. The weak human who had somehow stumbled onto the pirate reconnaissance. Tell them what you told me about Earth's defensive strategies during the resource wars, Wraith ordered. Sarah's mouth went dry. She hadn't realized that her report had included historical context, but apparently Colonel Wraith had read between the lines. Sir, During the Resource Wars, Earth developed asymmetric defensive tactics designed to counter larger, more technologically advanced forces. Elaborate. Sarah took a deep breath. When faced with superior firepower, human forces learned to use deception, misdirection, and environmental factors to level the playing field. We called it making the enemy fight our war instead of theirs. Admiral Zarthek's energy form flickered with interest. Continue. The pirates expect us to mass our ships for a conventional defense, Sarah said, gaining confidence. But what if we don't? What if we make them come to us on our terms? She moved to the tactical display, her hands shaking slightly as she manipulated the holographic controls. The asteroid field surrounding the research facility isn't just an obstacle, it's a weapon. If we position our ships correctly, we can channel the pirate advance into predetermined kill zones. The asteroids would interfere with our own weapons systems. Commander Velrus objected. Only if we fight like them, Sarah replied. But humans learn to fight in environments that would cripple other forces. Zero visibility, extreme electromagnetic interference, gravitational anomalies. We adapted because we had to. Colonel Wraith smiled grimly. Show them the Kobayashi maneuver. Sarah's eyes widened. The Kobayashi maneuver was a theoretical tactic taught in Earth's advanced strategic courses, considered too dangerous for practical application. It involved using a seemingly disabled ship as bait, while hidden forces struck from unexpected vectors. We designate one of our training cruisers as apparently crippled, Sarah explained, her voice growing stronger. The pirates will move to capture it, thinking it's an easy prize. Meanwhile, cadet squadrons hide in the asteroid field's electromagnetic shadow. When the pirates commit to the capture, we hit them from all sides while they're focused on the prize. The room erupted in discussion. Some officers called it brilliant. Others called it suicide. But Admiral Zarthek raised a glowing hand for silence. The risk is enormous, the Admiral said. If the cadets are detected before the ambush is sprung, they'll be slaughtered. They won't be detected, Sarah said quietly. How can you be certain? Sarah looked around the room at the assembled officers, all representatives of species with incredible natural abilities, because none of you would think to look for us there. The asteroid field's interference makes sensor detection nearly impossible at close range. The pirates will rely on visual confirmation and energy signatures. But if our ships run on minimal power and use the asteroids for cover, they'll be invisible until it's too late. Colonel Wraith finished. Admiral Zarthek studied the tactical display for a long moment. The pirate fleet would arrive in 18 hours. There wasn't time for conventional reinforcements, and a straight fight would end in disaster. Very well, the Admiral decided. We'll implement this plan. Colonel Wraith, select your cadet squadrons. Commander Velrus, prepare the research facility for emergency data purge if the plan fails. All department heads begin immediate preparation for asymmetric defensive operations. As the command staff dispersed to their duties, Colonel Wraith approached Sarah. Cadet Chen, you'll be joining my command staff as tactical advisor. Sir, I'm not qualified. You just convinced a galactic admiral to stake the defense of a critical installation on a human military theory. Wraith interrupted. I'd say you're plenty qualified. Besides, this was your plan. You should see it through. Sarah nodded, trying to process the enormity of what was happening. Hours ago, she had been the Academy joke, the weak human who couldn't keep up. Now she was helping plan the defense against a pirate armada. But as she watched the tactical preparations begin, Sarah realized that this was exactly what she had trained for her entire life. Not the individual tests and challenges where her human limitations showed, but the kind of complex, multifaceted problem that required seeing patterns others missed and finding solutions others wouldn't consider. The pirates were about to learn why Earth had survived the resource wars and why humans had earned their place among the stars, not through superior strength or technology, but through the simple refusal to accept that any problem was unsolvable. The countdown to battle had begun, and Sarah Chen was about to show the galaxy what humanity really meant by the phrase, "Never give up." The Academy's hangar bay hummed with frantic activity as cadet squadrons prepared for what many believed would be their first and final combat mission. Sarah moved between the ship crews, helping coordinate the modifications necessary for the Kobayashi maneuver while trying to ignore the stares and whispers that followed her. The human thinks, she's a strategist now, she heard a Saurian cadet mutter to his wingman. First real battle and she'll probably wet herself. Sarah kept walking. She had bigger concerns than hurt feelings. The plan required precise timing and absolute discipline. 12 cadet squadrons would hide in the asteroid field's sensor shadow, running on minimal power while the modified training cruiser Defiant played the role of damaged bait. When the pirates moved to board the apparently helpless vessel, the hidden squadrons would emerge and strike in coordinated waves. On paper, it was brilliant. In reality, it depended on cadets with minimal combat experience executing a complex ambush against battle-hardened pirates. Chen, Colonel Wraith's voice cut through the hangar noise. Sarah jogged over to where he stood with the squadron leaders, a mixed group of aliens who looked less than thrilled about taking tactical advice from a human. "Report on squadron readiness," Wraith ordered. Sarah consulted her datapad. All ships have been fitted with extended-range stealth packages and emergency power dampeners. Navigation computers have been programmed with asteroid field routes that maximize cover. Weapon systems have been recalibrated for close-range combat. Squadron leader Vexnal, a massive Krogar with battle scars crisscrossing his armored hide, stepped forward. "Colonel, my pilots are concerned about the human's tactical competence. She has no combat experience." Before Wraith could respond, Sarah spoke up. "You're right. I've never been in real combat. But I've studied every major space battle in galactic history, including 17 conflicts where numerically inferior forces defeated superior enemies through tactical innovation." She activated her datapad's holoprojector, displaying the asteroid field layout. "Squadron leader Vexnal, your Krogar fighters have the heaviest armor and strongest shields. You'll take position here in the main approach corridor. When the pirates commit to boarding the Defiant, you'll emerge and engage their capital ships head-on, drawing their attention." "A frontal assault?" Vexnal's translator carried a note of approval. "Finally, tactics that make sense." While Vexnal's squadron occupies their attention, Sarah continued, "Squadrons 2 through 5 will emerge from these positions and target their fighter screens. Squadrons 6 through 9 will circle around and hit their capital ships from behind. The key is timing. If anyone emerges too early, the ambush fails." Flight leader Zixara, whose Mantari compound eyes could track multiple targets simultaneously, studied the display with interest. "The coordination required is complex. How do we maintain communication while running silent?" Sarah smiled. "We don't. Each squadron follows predetermined attack vectors based on time elapsed since the pirates take the bait. No communication needed, just discipline and timing." The alien pilots exchanged glances. It was either genius or madness, and they weren't sure which. Colonel Wraith checked his chronometer. "Pirates enter the system in 6 hours. All squadrons launch in 4 hours to reach position." Any questions? Cadet Thrix, the Mantari who had dismissed Sarah's reconnaissance discovery, raised a clawed appendage. "What if the pirates don't take the bait? What if they ignore the damaged ship and attack the research facility directly? Then we're all dead," Sarah said matter-of-factly. "But they won't ignore it. Pirates are scavengers first and raiders second. A apparently helpless Galactic Defense Force cruiser is too valuable a prize to pass up. They'll want to capture it intact for resale. You're betting all our lives on pirate psychology?" Thrix's translator carried a note of disbelief. "I'm betting our lives on human understanding of greed," Sarah corrected. "My species has had extensive experience with both." As the briefing dispersed, Sarah found herself alone with Colonel Wraith. The older human studied her with eyes that had seen too much war. "Having second thoughts?" he asked quietly. "Every minute," Sarah admitted. "But I keep coming back to the same conclusion. This is our best chance. Maybe our only chance." "The cadets don't trust you yet," Wraith observed. "They see a human who got lucky once. They're not wrong. I did get lucky. But luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and I've been preparing my whole life for problems like this." Wraith nodded slowly. "Your personnel file makes interesting reading. Top of your class at Earth Military Academy. Advanced degrees in xenobiology and tactical analysis. Fluent in 7 alien languages. But what caught my attention was your childhood." Sarah tensed. Her childhood wasn't something she discussed. "Grew up in the Australian outback during the water wars," Wraith continued. "Father was a hydrologist, mother was a survival instructor. You learned to find patterns in chaos because your life depended on it. Water sources, weather patterns, animal behavior, all data points that meant the difference between life and death. What's your point, Colonel?" My point is that while your classmates were developing natural abilities, you were developing something more valuable, the ability to see what others miss and find solutions where others see only problems. That's not luck, cadet. That's training. 2 hours later, Sarah strapped herself into the observer seat aboard the command ship Vigilant. Her job was to monitor the battle and provide tactical adjustments as needed. But she felt more like dead weight than an asset. Captain Torval, the ship's ethereal commander, regarded her with barely concealed skepticism. Human, if your plan fails, you'll be responsible for the deaths of over 300 cadets. If my plan fails. Captain, I'll probably be among them, Sarah replied. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic maze of tumbling rock and metal debris. Somewhere in that maze, 12 squadrons of nervous cadets were taking position for an ambush that would either save the Academy or destroy an entire generation of potential officers. Contact, Sensor Operator Klayesh announced. 17 ships emerging from hyperspace. Configuration matches Pirate Consortium Battle Group. Sarah watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet spread into attack formation. The ships were mismatched, clearly captured or stolen from various galactic navies, but they moved with the practiced efficiency of experienced raiders. They're scanning the research facility, Klayesh reported. Energy signatures suggest they're mapping defensive positions. Right on schedule, Sarah murmured. They're following standard pirate doctrine. Assess the target, identify threats, plan the attack. The lead pirate ship, a captured Krogar dreadnought, began broadcasting on multiple frequencies. The translation came through clearly. Attention Galactic Defense Forces. You are outgunned and outnumbered. Surrender the research facility and we will allow safe passage for Academy personnel. Captain Torval looked at Sarah. Standard procedure would be to negotiate for time. No, Sarah said firmly. That's what they expect. Instead, have the Defiant emerge from the asteroid field now, apparently attempting to flee. That's not the plan. It's an adjustment to the plan, Sarah interrupted. The pirates need to believe they're seeing desperation, not strategy. A ship running from a hopeless fight is exactly what they want to see. Captain Torval hesitated, then gave the order. On the display, the training cruiser Defiant appeared to stumble out of the asteroid field, its engines flickering as if damaged. The pirate fleet's formation immediately shifted. Just as Sarah had predicted, they moved to intercept the apparently helpless ship. They're taking the bait, she whispered. The countdown to battle had reached 0. Now everything depended on whether a group of undertrained cadets could execute a plan, designed by the Academy's least respected member. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to ignore the voice in her head that kept whispering one terrifying possibility. What if she was wrong? The pirate dreadnought moved through space like a predator closing on wounded prey. Sarah watched the tactical display. As the enemy fleet divided itself exactly as she had predicted, 6 ships pursuing the apparently crippled Defiant while the remaining 11 maintained position around the research facility. They're following textbook pirate doctrine, she murmured to Colonel Wraith, who had joined the command crew aboard the Vigilant. Split forces to capture prizes while maintaining enough strength to complete the primary objective. Captain Torval's energy form flickered with nervous tension. The pursuing ships are gaining on the Defiant. If they discover it's a trap before our squadrons are in position, they won't, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. The Defiant's crew knows their job. They'll maintain the illusion until the last possible moment. On the display, the training cruiser continued its apparent desperate flight, engines sputtering convincingly while the pirate ships closed the distance. Sarah had spent hours with the Defiant's crew, teaching them how to fake damage without actually crippling their ship. Every energy flicker, every course correction had to look authentic to pirate sensors. The hidden cadet squadrons remained invisible, tucked into the asteroid field's sensor shadows exactly as planned. Sarah tracked their positions on her private display, knowing that each green dot represented a group of young beings who had placed their lives in her hands. Defiant to command, came the whispered transmission. Pirates are hailing us, demanding surrender. Sarah leaned into the communications console. Defiant, respond with standard distress protocols. Make them think you're too damaged to comply immediately. Contact, Sensor Operator Klayesh announced. The pirate dreadnought is launching boarding pods. Sarah's heart raced. This was the critical moment. If the pirates detected the trap now, the entire plan would collapse into disaster. All squadrons maintain position, she ordered on the encrypted channel. Wait for my signal. The boarding pods crossed the void between the Dreadnought and the Defiant like metal bullets. Sarah watched their approach, calculating vectors and timing with the precision her childhood had taught her. Everything had to be perfect. The first pod latched onto the Defiant's hull with a metallic clang that resonated through the ship's structure. Then the second and the third. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the pirate Marines beginning their assault on the cruiser's airlock. Now they're committed, she whispered. Squadron 1, prepare for emergence. Vexnall's voice crackled through the comm. Squadron 1 ready. Kroger warriors eager for battle. Not yet, Sarah cautioned. Let them get deeper into the trap. The pirate ships had now surrounded the Defiant, their attention focused entirely on the capture operation. Their sensors were trained on the boarding action, their weapons powered down to avoid accidentally damaging their prize. It was exactly what Sarah had hoped for. The pirates have breached the Defiant's outer hull, Klyesh reported. They're fighting through the ship compartment by compartment. Sarah knew that the Defiant's crew was conducting a fighting retreat according to plan, making the pirates work for every meter while buying precious time for the ambush to develop. Pirate reinforcements are moving into boarding position, Captain Torval observed. 3 more ships approaching the Defiant. Perfect, Sarah breathed. All squadrons execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The asteroid field erupted with light as 12 cadet squadrons powered up their engines simultaneously. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly blazed with the energy signatures of over 70 fighters and gunships. Squadron 1 burst from the asteroids like an avalanche of metal and fury. Vexnall's Krogar fighters, built for head-to-head combat, slammed into the pirate formation with devastating effect. Their heavy weapons tore through shields that hadn't expected an attack from that vector. Squadron 1 engaging. Vexnall's voice boomed with savage joy. For the Academy! Squadrons 2 through 5 emerged from different positions, their lighter fighters swirling around the pirate ships like angry insects. The enemy formation, caught completely off guard, began to break apart as captains tried to respond to threats coming from every direction. Pirates are attempting to regroup, Klyesh reported. Their capital ships are powering weapons. Not fast enough, Sarah said grimly.
Squadron 6 through 9, execute flanking maneuver now.
The second wave of cadets emerged from behind the largest asteroids, catching the pirate fleet from their unprotected rear. Energy beams and missile salvos tore into ships that had turned to face the first attack, leaving their engines and rear shields vulnerable. One of the smaller pirate vessels exploded in a brilliant flash, its reactor overloading under the coordinated assault. A second ship began venting atmosphere, its hull breached by concentrated fire from Mantari precision fighters. The pirates are trying to escape, Captain Torval announced with something approaching excitement. Squadrons 10 through 12 cut off their retreat, Sarah ordered. Don't let them reach hyperspace. The final wave of cadet squadrons emerged between the pirates and open space, forming a barrier that trapped the enemy fleet in the asteroid field. The tables had completely turned. The hunters had become the hunted, but the pirates weren't finished. The Dreadnought, realizing it had been caught in an elaborate trap, began powering its main weapons. Its massive plasma cannons could destroy any of the cadet fighters with a single shot. All squadrons scatter, Sarah shouted. Don't give them grouped targets! The cadet formation dispersed like a flock of startled birds, but the Dreadnought's gunners were experienced. A lance of superheated plasma reached out and vaporized a Zephyrian fighter instantly. We're losing people, Colonel Wraith said grimly. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The ambush had worked perfectly, but now they faced the pirates' superior firepower in a straight fight. She needed another edge, another unexpected move. That's when she noticed something that made her smile grimly. Squadron 1, concentrate fire on the Dreadnought's boarding pod attachment points, she ordered. That won't penetrate their armor, Vexnall protested. I'm not trying to penetrate armor, Sarah replied. I'm trying to create debris. Understanding dawned on the Krogar squadron leader. The boarding pods were still attached to the Defiant, creating connection points that could be exploited. If they severed those connections violently enough, concentrated fire from the heavy Krogar fighters struck the boarding pod attachment points. The pods, no longer secured to the Defiant's hull, became tumbling projectiles that slammed into the dreadnought's own shields. "Brilliant," Captain Torval exclaimed. "The pirates' own equipment becomes weapons against them." But Sarah was already planning the next move. The enemy fleet was trapped and confused, but they still had superior firepower. The battle was far from over, and she knew that their initial success would only make the pirates more desperate and dangerous. "All squadrons, Phase 2 of the attack plan," she announced. "Time to show them what happens when you corner Academy cadets." The real battle was just beginning, and Sarah Chen was about to demonstrate why human tactical thinking had earned fear and respect across a dozen war-torn star systems. The weak little human was showing the galaxy what it really meant to fight smart instead of strong. The battle had evolved into a deadly dance among the asteroids, with cadet squadrons using the tumbling rocks as cover, while pirates struggled to bring their superior firepower to bear in the confined space. Sarah watched the tactical display with intense focus, orchestrating the chaos like a conductor directing a symphony of destruction. "Squadron 4, use asteroid 77 Alpha as a slingshot," she commanded. "Time your approach with its rotation to mask your engine signatures." Flight leader Zixara's Mentari squadron disappeared behind the massive spinning rock, their fighters invisible to pirate sensors until they burst out at an unexpected angle, raking a destroyer's flank with concentrated fire. "Impossible," Captain Torval exclaimed. "No one can calculate asteroid rotation timing that precisely in real time." "Humans can," Colonel Wraith said quietly. "We had to learn. On Earth we call it reading the terrain." Sarah ignored the exchange, her attention focused on a developing crisis. The pirate dreadnought had finally cleared its weapon systems and was systematically destroying asteroids to create clear firing lanes. Each blast from its main guns eliminated cover that the cadet squadrons desperately needed. "They're clearing the field," she muttered. "Smart, Captain. Once they have open space, their range and firepower advantages become decisive." 2 more cadet fighters died as the dreadnought's gunners found their range. The ethereal pilot's energy signature simply vanished, while the crystalline fighter shattered into 1,000 sparkling fragments. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to think like a pirate captain. What would she do in his position? The obvious answer was to clear firing lanes and force a conventional battle, but there had to be a weakness she could exploit. That's when she noticed the pattern in the dreadnought's firing sequence. "Squadron leaders, new priority target," she announced. "All available squadrons converge on the dreadnought but don't attack it directly. I want coordinated strikes on every piece of debris and asteroid fragment within 500 meters of that ship." "That's a waste of ammunition," Squadron leader Vexnal protested. "We should focus on their weakest ships first." "Trust me," Sarah said firmly. "Create as much floating debris as possible around the dreadnought. Make it a navigation hazard." The cadet squadrons, despite their confusion, began following her orders. Energy beams and missile strikes pulverized asteroids and space debris, creating a cloud of tumbling fragments around the massive pirate ship. "The dreadnought is reducing speed," sensor operator Klyesh reported. "They're concerned about collision damage." Sarah smiled grimly. She had just turned the pirate's size advantage into a liability. The dreadnought was too large to maneuver safely through the debris field the cadets had created, forcing it to reduce speed and limit its movement options. "Phase 3, she announced. "All squadrons, Wolfpack tactics. Attack in coordinated waves, forcing them to choose between targets." What followed was a masterpiece of small unit coordination. Instead of the chaotic furball that most space battles became, the cadet squadrons moved with purpose and precision. They struck from multiple vectors simultaneously, forcing the pirates to divide their fire and reducing the effectiveness of their superior weapons. But the pirates were learning too. Their formation began to tighten, ships supporting each other with overlapping fields of fire. The battle was becoming a war of attrition, and Sarah knew that time favored the enemy. "Ma'am," came a quiet voice from the communications station. "I'm receiving a transmission from the Defiant." Sarah had almost forgotten about the training cruiser in the heat of battle. The Defiant had been playing dead while pirates fought through its corridors. But now, "Put it through," she ordered. Captain Morrison's voice crackled with static and the sound of weapons fire in the background. "Command, this is Defiant. We've been conducting a fighting retreat as planned, but the pirates have reached our reactor compartment. We can't hold them much longer." "Understood, Defiant." Can you implement Protocol 7? There was a pause. Protocol 7 was a desperate measure, overloading the ship's reactor to create a massive explosion. It would destroy the Defiant and everyone aboard, but it would also eliminate the pirates who had boarded her. Negative on Protocol 7, Morrison replied, but we have something better. The pirates brought heavy cutting equipment to breach our reactor shielding. If we can time it right. Sarah's eyes widened as she understood what Morrison was suggesting. You want to let them breach the reactor? Affirmative. We've rigged the containment system to fail catastrophically when breached from the outside. The explosion will be directed outward toward their ships. My crew is already evacuated to the emergency pods. It was brilliant and insane in equal measure. Instead of sacrificing the Defiant defensively, they would turn it into a weapon that could devastate the pirate boarding fleet. How long do you need? Sarah asked. 60 seconds for final evacuation, then another 30 for the pirates to complete their breach. Sarah looked at the tactical display. In 90 seconds, she needed to position the enemy ships for maximum damage from the Defiant's explosion, while keeping the cadet squadrons clear of the blast zone. All squadrons. Immediate tactical withdrawal, she ordered. Clear the area around the Defiant. I repeat, all units clear the blast zone now. What blast zone? Vexnall demanded. What are you planning, human? Something the pirates will never see coming, Sarah replied. Squadron 1, I need you to herd the enemy ships closer to the Defiant. Make them think you're retreating in panic. The Krogar fighters, despite their confusion, began pulling back from the pirate formation while firing wildly. To the enemy, it looked like the cadets were finally breaking under pressure. The pirate captains, sensing victory, pressed their advantage. Their ships moved closer to the Defiant, wanting to support the boarding operation and prevent any last-minute academy tricks. Defiant to command, Morrison's voice was barely audible over the sound of cutting torches. They're through the outer containment. Beginning final countdown. Sarah watched the seconds tick by on her chronometer. The pirate ships were perfectly positioned, drawn in by what they thought was the Academy's desperation. All squadrons, maximum distance from the Defiant, she ordered. Brace for shockwave. The Defiant erupted in a sphere of nuclear fire that turned night into day. The contained fusion reaction, released all at once, consumed the training cruiser and reached out with tendrils of superheated plasma. 3 pirate ships simply vanished, caught too close to the explosion to escape. 2 more were crippled, their hulls cracked open like eggs by the shockwave. The dreadnought, farther away but still within the blast radius, staggered as the explosion overwhelmed its shields and sent it tumbling through space. Direct hit. Captain Torval's energy form blazed with excitement. The pirate formation is broken. But Sarah wasn't celebrating yet. The explosion had been devastating, but it hadn't ended the battle. The surviving pirates were regrouping and their remaining ships were still dangerous. Damage assessment, she ordered. 7 pirate vessels destroyed or disabled, Klyash reported. 10 ships remaining, including the dreadnought. Their formation is scattered, but they're beginning to regroup. Sarah studied the new tactical situation. The odds were now roughly even, but the pirates still had superior individual firepower. She needed one more edge, one more unexpected move to tip the balance decisively. That's when she noticed something interesting about the dreadnought's position. The massive ship had been knocked off course by the Defiant's explosion, and its current trajectory would take it directly through the densest part of the asteroid field. Squadron leaders, new target priority, she announced. I want every available ship to target the navigation sensors on the dreadnought. Don't try to penetrate their armor, just blind them. Their armor will deflect our weapons, Flight Leader Zixara protested. I'm not trying to destroy them, Sarah explained. I'm trying to make them crash. Understanding dawned on the squadron leaders. A ship the size of the dreadnought couldn't navigate the asteroid field without precise sensor data. If they could blind it while it was already on a collision course. All squadrons, concentrate fire on the dreadnought's sensor arrays, Vexnall ordered, his voice carrying new respect for the humans' tactical thinking. The cadet fighters swarmed around the massive ship like angry wasps, their weapons striking not at its heavy armor, but at the delicate sensor clusters that dotted its hull. Each hit reduced the ship's ability to see the asteroids rushing toward it. They're trying to alter course, Klyash reported, but their navigation is compromised. Sarah watched with grim satisfaction as the dreadnought, blinded and off balance, struck a massive asteroid with its port side. The impact sent both ship and rock tumbling through space in a complex dance of destruction. The pirate flagship was out of the fight, and with it went any hope the remaining pirates had of victory. One by one, the surviving enemy ships began transmitting surrender codes. All pirate vessels have surrendered, Captain Torval announced. The Academy is secure. Sarah slumped in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. They had won, but the cost had been high. Good people had died, and she would carry the weight of those decisions for the rest of her life. But they had won. Against superior numbers and firepower, a group of Academy. History. But she had no idea that her performance had been observed by more than just Academy staff, and that her tactical innovations were about to attract attention from the highest levels of G3 days after the battle. Sarah sat in the Academy's memorial garden, staring at the new names etched into the crystalline wall. 17 cadets had died in the fight against the pirates, and their loss weighed heavily on her conscience. Each name represented someone who had trusted her tactical decisions, someone who had followed her plan into battle and never returned. The garden was quiet in the artificial evening light, a place where students came to remember those who had given their lives in service to the galactic community. Sarah had been coming here every day since the battle, trying to reconcile her tactical success with the human cost of victory. Guilt is the burden of command, a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Colonel Wraith approaching, his weathered face showing the same exhaustion she felt. How do you bear it, sir? Knowing that your decisions cost lives? Wraith sat beside her on the memorial bench, his eyes finding the newest names on the wall. You remember them, every single one. You learn from their sacrifice and you try to ensure it wasn't in vain. The other cadets look at me differently now, Sarah said quietly, some with respect, others with fear. They see the tactical officer who won the battle, not the person who sent their friends to die. That's the price of leadership, Wraith replied. But there's something you need to understand about those 17 cadets. They volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. They chose to follow your plan because they believed in it and in you. Sarah wiped away a tear she hadn't realized was falling. It doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to be easy. The moment it becomes easy to send people into battle is the moment you lose your humanity. Before Sarah could respond, her communicator chimed with an urgent message. Cadet Chen, report to Admiral Zarthek's office immediately. Sarah and Wraith exchanged glances. Being summoned to the Admiral's office usually meant either commendation or court-martial, and at this point, either seemed possible. The Admiral's office occupied the highest level of the Academy's central tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a panoramic view of the space around the station. Admiral Zarthek stood with his back to the door, his energy form crackling with what appeared to be nervous tension. Cadet Chen reporting as ordered. Sir, Sarah announced, standing at rigid attention. The Admiral turned, and Sarah was surprised to see another figure in the room, a being she had never encountered before. The stranger appeared humanoid but with silvery skin that seemed to shift like liquid mercury. Most striking were the eyes, which held depths that suggested vast intelligence and ancient wisdom. Cadet Chen, Admiral Zarthek said, allow me to introduce Strategist Prime Veltar of the Galactic Strategic Command. Sarah's breath caught. The Galactic Strategic Command was the highest military authority in known space, responsible for coordinating defense against existential threats. Their strategist primes were legendary figures who planned campaigns spanning multiple star systems. Cadet, Veltar said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple vocal cords. Your recent tactical performance has attracted considerable attention in certain circles. I was just doing my duty, sir, Sarah replied, still at attention. Sit, Veltar commanded, and Sarah gratefully took the offered chair. Tell me, what do you know about the Devourers? Sarah's blood ran cold. The Devourers were the stuff of nightmares, an extragalactic force that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. They had been quiet for nearly 2 decades, but intelligence reports suggested they were massing for another assault on galactic civilization. I know they represent the greatest threat to galactic civilization, Sarah said carefully. Self-replicating machines that consume matter to build more of themselves. No known method of communication, no apparent goal beyond consumption. Correct. Veltar nodded. What you may not know is that they have begun moving again. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected Devourer scouts in 3 outer rim systems. We believe a full assault is imminent. Admiral Zarthek's energy form flickered with agitation. The Galactic Council is mobilizing every available fleet. But our projections show a 70% probability of defeat using conventional tactics. Which brings us to you, Veltar said, his silver features reflecting the starlight from the windows. Your performance against the pirates demonstrated an unusual approach to tactical thinking. You consistently found ways to turn disadvantages into advantages, to make superior forces fight on your terms rather than their own. Sarah felt a chill of premonition. What are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to think, Veltar replied. The Devourers have superior numbers, superior technology, and superior firepower. Every time we've faced them, we've tried to match strength with strength. It hasn't worked. But humans, Admiral Zarthek interjected, have a history of defeating superior forces through unconventional thinking. Your species' military history is filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through tactical innovation. Veltar activated a holographic display that showed the galactic map. Red markers indicated confirmed Devourer positions, while blue markers showed Allied fleet concentrations. The picture was grim. The enemy outnumbered them nearly 3-1. I want you to study everything we know about the Devourers, Veltar said. Their tactics, their technology, their behavior patterns. Find me something our strategists have missed. Find me a way to win. Sarah stared at the tactical display, her mind already beginning to process the information. Sir, I'm just a cadet. Surely there are more qualified officers. There are more experienced officers, Veltar corrected. But experience can also mean rigid thinking. Sometimes it takes fresh eyes to see possibilities that others have missed. How much time do I have? Sarah asked. 48 hours, Admiral Zarthek replied. After that, the Council meets to finalize battle plans. If you can present a viable alternative strategy, it will be considered at the highest levels. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical force. 2 days to find a solution that had eluded the galaxy's best military minds for decades. 2 days to potentially save billions of lives. I'll need access to the strategic archives, she said. Already arranged, Veltar replied. You'll also have a dedicated analysis team and unlimited computing resources. As Sarah prepared to leave, Veltar called her back. One more thing, Cadet. The reason your pirate battle caught our attention wasn't just the tactics you used. It was how you used them. Most strategists plan battles. You planned a war. I don't understand, sir. You didn't just think about defeating the pirates, Veltar explained. You thought about changing their entire strategic calculus. You made them doubt their assumptions, question their advantages, fight a different kind of battle than they had ever fought before. Sarah nodded slowly, beginning to understand the magnitude of what she was being asked to do. That's what we need now, Veltar continued. Not just tactics to win a battle, but strategy to win a war. The Devourers think they understand us, think they know how we fight. We need to prove them wrong. As Sarah left the Admiral's office, her mind was already racing through possibilities. The Devourers were machines, which meant they operated according to programming and logic. But logic could be exploited if you understood it well enough. She had 48 hours to crack a problem that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds. It seemed impossible, but then again, so had defeating a pirate armada with a handful of Academy cadets. Time to show the Devourers what human tactical thinking could really accomplish when the survival of galactic civilization hung in the balance. The girl who had been laughed at in training was about to become the strategist who might save the galaxy. Galactic Military Command. Sarah emerged from the strategic archives after 36 hours of continuous research, her eyes bloodshot, and her mind reeling from the enormity of what she had discovered. The archives contained every recorded encounter with the Devourers spanning 2 centuries, and the pattern she had found was both terrifying and enlightening. Colonel Wraith waited outside the archive vault with a steaming cup of coffee and a concerned expression. You look like hell, Chen. I feel worse than I look, Sarah admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. But I think I found something. What kind of something? Sarah activated her portable holoprojector, displaying the galactic map with Devourer movement patterns overlaid in temporal sequence. The Devourers aren't random destroyers. They're following a specific protocol. A harvesting pattern that maximizes resource acquisition while minimizing energy expenditure. Wraith studied the display with growing interest. They're farming us. Exactly. Look at the timing. Sarah highlighted different invasion waves. They attack every 18 to 20 years, always targeting systems that have reached specific technological and population thresholds. They're not trying to exterminate galactic civilization. They're managing it. Like crop rotation, Wraith murmured. More like sustainable harvesting, Sarah corrected. They take enough to fuel their expansion, but leave enough for civilization to rebuild and advance. Then they come back when we've reached the next threshold. The implications were staggering. The galaxy hadn't been fighting for survival against mindless machines. They had been livestock being periodically culled by intelligent farmers. There's more, Sarah continued, manipulating the display to show detailed tactical analyses. Every major battle follows the same pattern. The Devourers assess our capabilities, then deploy exactly enough force to overwhelm our defenses with minimal losses on their side. They're optimizing for efficiency, not total victory. Which means they have finite resources, Wraith realized. And finite adaptability, Sarah added. They're machines operating according to programmed parameters. They expect us to fight the same way we always have, with the same strategies and technologies. But what if we don't? Sarah's communicator chimed with a priority message from Admiral Zarthek. The Galactic Council session would begin in 6 hours, and they needed her analysis immediately. The council chamber was a marvel of engineering, a massive sphere that could accommodate representatives from hundreds of species. Sarah found herself standing at the central podium, looking up at tier upon tier of alien dignitaries who held the fate of galactic civilization in their collective hands. Admiral Zarthek made the introductions while Sarah tried to calm her racing heart. When her turn came to speak, she activated the holographic display and began the most important briefing of her life. Honored council members, I believe we have been fighting the wrong war. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Krogar representative, a massive warrior covered in battle scars, leaned forward aggressively. Explain yourself, human. The Devourers are not trying to exterminate us, Sarah said, highlighting her analysis on the display. They're managing us. Every invasion follows a precise pattern designed to harvest resources while maintaining galactic civilization as a renewable asset. Walk them through her findings, the mathematical precision of Devourer timing, the careful calibration of force deployment, the systematic nature of their target selection. With each point, the council chamber grew quieter as the implications sank in. If this analysis is correct, said Councillor Mixtel, her ethereal form flickering with agitation, then conventional resistance is pointless. They've already calculated our response patterns into their strategy, which is why we need to change the game entirely, Sarah replied. The Devourers expect us to mass our fleets for defensive battles at key strategic points. They've planned for that scenario. But what if we don't give them the war they expect? She activated a new display showing her proposed strategy. Instead of fighting a defensive war, I propose we fight an insurgency. The council chamber erupted in voices from a dozen species, all talking at once. The concept of insurgency was familiar to humans but alien to most galactic species, who preferred direct confrontation or diplomatic solutions. Strategist Prime Veltar raised a silvery hand for silence. Elaborate, Cadet Chen. The Devourers are machines, Sarah explained. They operate efficiently because they can predict our behavior. But insurgency tactics are inherently unpredictable. Small mobile forces striking at unexpected targets, then disappearing before the enemy can respond. She modified the display to show hit-and-run attack vectors. Instead of defending our worlds, we evacuate them. Instead of massing our fleets, we disperse them into small squadrons. We don't try to stop the Devourers from advancing. We make their advance meaningless. You're suggesting we abandon entire star systems? The Mentari delegate's compound eyes tracked Sarah with obvious disbelief. Temporarily, Sarah confirmed. The Devourers consume resources to fuel their expansion. But what if there are no resources to consume? What if every world they reach has been stripped bare by organized evacuation? The brilliance of the plan began to dawn on the assembled delegates. If the Devourers found empty worlds instead of thriving civilizations, their efficient harvesting protocols would be useless. Furthermore, Sarah continued, while they're wasting time and energy searching empty systems, Our dispersed fleets conduct precision strikes against their supply lines and manufacturing centers. We turn their expansion into a liability. Counselor Vexnal, representing the warrior-minded Krogar, stood slowly. This is a coward strategy. Where is the honor in running from battle? Sarah looked directly at the massive alien. Counselor, your people survived the Great Dying by adapting their tactics to a changing environment. This is no different. The question isn't whether this strategy is honorable. It's whether it will save lives and preserve civilization. The logistics would be enormous, observed the collective's hive mind representative. Evacuating entire star systems, coordinating scattered fleets, maintaining supply lines across vast distances. Difficult, Sarah agreed, but not impossible. And the alternative is facing the Devourers in the kind of war they're designed to win. For the next hour, Sarah fielded questions, objections, and challenges from delegates who represented the full spectrum of galactic military thinking. Some saw the wisdom in her approach, others worried about the unprecedented coordination required, and still others questioned whether such radical departure from established doctrine could work. Finally, strategist Prime Veltar stood to address the council. This strategy represents a fundamental shift in our approach to the Devourer threat. It requires us to abandon conventional thinking and embrace tactics that prioritize survival over glory. He paused, his ancient eyes finding Sarah in the chamber. But analysis suggests it may be our only viable option for long-term survival. I recommend immediate implementation of the Chen Protocol. The vote was closer than Sarah had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. The galactic fleets would disperse, civilian populations would begin systematic evacuation, and for the first time in 2 centuries, they would meet the Devourers with something other than massed resistance. As the council session ended, and delegates began the enormous task of implementing her strategy, Sarah found herself approached by Colonel Wraith. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You just revolutionized galactic military doctrine." "I just hope it works," Sarah replied. Watching a species that had been enemies for millennia began coordinating the largest evacuation in galactic history. "It will work," Wraith assured her. "Do you know why I'm so confident?" Sarah shook her head. "Because you didn't just solve a tactical problem, you solved a strategic one. You looked at a situation where everyone saw inevitable defeat and found a path to victory. That's not just good military thinking. That's the kind of thinking that changes the course of history." 3 months later, as the first Devourer scouts entered what they expected to be a thriving star system and found only empty worlds and silent space, Sarah Chen's name would become legend throughout the galaxy. But she would never lose sight of the lesson that had brought her to this moment. That strength isn't about being the biggest or the fastest or the most powerful. Sometimes the greatest victories come from being smart enough to change the rules of the game entirely. The girl they had laughed at in training had become the strategist who saved galactic civilization, not by fighting harder but by fighting smarter. In the end, that was the most human thing of all.